now we want to look at the next section, and we talked about parallelograms in the quadrilateral section. And what we want to do now is we want to talk about tests for parallelograms. But as we get to that, I want to take this opportunity going through parallelograms and quadrilaterals, all the quadrilaterals, to also review Venn diagrams. Now, Venn diagrams are just drawings that represent the relationships between different items. It starts with a universe. And once you define your universe, then you can begin to put things in that universe or relate things to that universe depending on what their relationships are. So, this is a good time for us to review this because quadrilaterals are related to each other, and through Venn diagrams we can actually map and show those relationships very easily. So what we've got here is we're talking about in chapter 6, our universe is what? What's the name of this section? Quadrilaterals. So our universe is going to be quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals have certain characteristics which we're going to show. They are a closed four sides. Okay? They're closed and they have four sides. Alright? And the second one is the sum of their interior angles is equal to 360. So those are characteristics that all quadrilaterals have. Now within quadrilaterals we have something called parallelograms. So within this universe we have something called parallelograms that we've talked about. Now all parallelograms, since they're quadrilaterals, have to have this. Okay? We don't have to restate it because they belong to quadrilaterals and they're inside this universe called quadrilaterals. We know that they all have four sides and sum of their interior angles is equal to 360. Now parallelograms have their own sets of characteristics. Now I apologize, but when I introduced parallelograms I mentioned four characteristics. There really are five. One of them is definitional. The other one are theorems that determine and describe those characteristics. First one, two pair of opposite parallel sides. That's the definition of parallelogram. Two pairs of opposite parallel sides. That is parallelogram. Number two, two pairs of opposite congruent sides. Those sides are also parallel and congruent. Number three, two pair of opposite congruent angles. Opposite angles are congruent. Number four, consecutive angles are supplementary. Number five, the diagonals bisect each other. So there's five different characteristics of parallelograms. Okay? On top of the two that belong to quadrilaterals. So parallelograms really have six characteristics, four belonging just to them, two that belong to them because they're members of the quadrilateral group. Now, so those are characteristics. You can draw something that looks like that and has these characteristics, we know it's a parallelogram. Now, what if we're given something? And we're saying, find out what this is. You're given a quadrilateral, you're not sure what it is, you're looking at it, it looks like a parallelogram, but you're not sure, how can we prove it's a parallelogram? Well, four of these over here we can turn into tests, and then we can combine one of them, two of them, into a fifth test. Okay? So let's look at that. Tests that we can do to determine if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Test number one. If both pairs of opposite sides are parallel, ching ching, we know we have a parallelogram. Okay? Both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. That's the definition of a parallelogram. Has to be that way. This is true, we have a parallelogram. Also, if we know that both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, so if we can prove that the opposite sides, both pairs, are congruent, then we have a parallelogram. We know that the figure somebody has laid out for us or described for us is a parallelogram. Test number three goes right along with number three over here. Both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So if we can prove that on that figure that we've been given, somebody drew for us, that both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, we have a parallelogram. Okay, now the next one, test number 4, comes with characteristic number 5. If the diagonals bisect each other, then we have a parallelogram. Why? Because that's a characteristic. The diagonals bisect each other, then we know we have a parallelogram. Okay? Fifth test is a combination of two of them. If we have a pair, this should be, let's get this correct here, one pair of opposite sides are both parallel and congruent. One pair, not both pair, but if one pair is both parallel and congruent. Okay? One pair of opposite sides is parallel and congruent, then we have a parallelogram. Okay? Alright, so those are tests given a quadrilateral. These are tests that we can perform on that. Any of these, if we meet any of those tests, then we know that that figure is a parallelogram. Here's our Venn diagram. Our universe is quadrilaterals. Here's characteristics of quadrilaterals. Parallelograms automatically adopt what's in the universe. Have no choice. Because they are quadrilaterals, they're going to get these characteristics. Now, parallelograms have their own characteristics. Okay? We're going to do some sample problems.